An elderly woman took pity on a young man who had nowhere to sleep. She offered him shelter, but later that night she woke up to the sound of him slowly entering her room, approaching her bed, and doing something terrifying. The young man was simply desperate, with no one left to turn to for support. His relatives had turned their backs on him, and he had no friends remaining. Then a distant relative, a kind but perhaps naive man, suggested a solution. Since the elderly woman he knew lived alone in a large apartment, why not let a tenant move in? She wouldn't feel so lonely, and he would have a safe place to sleep. The young man, about 25 years old, arrived at the elderly woman's home with a small backpack that barely contained a few shirts, a notebook, and an old photograph of his parents. He appeared quiet, modest, and even shy. When the grandmother saw him, her heart went out to him. She felt sorry for him, as if he were her own son. She immediately brought the young man into the house, asking him meticulously if he had eaten that day, if he would like potatoes and onions, and promised him oatmeal in the morning. She even let him wear some of her son's old clothes, as the son had gone for a while and rarely visited. That evening, the elderly woman made his bed in her son's room, straightened his pillow, made the sign of the cross over him, and quietly wished him good night. She went to her bedroom, smiling. For the first time in a long while, someone had visited her and spoken to her. She felt as if God had sent this young man to brighten her loneliness, even if just for a little while. The grandmother lay in the dark for a long time, listening to the creaking of the floorboards somewhere in the next room. Insomnia plagued her. Just as she was finally drifting off to sleep, she suddenly heard a soft rustling from the adjacent room. The grandmother opened her eyes and in the dim light of the night saw her bedroom door slowly opening. A figure stood in the doorway. It was the young man. He was holding something in his hands, and in the faint glow of the nightlight, his face looked strange, hard, without a trace of the gentleness the grandmother had seen during the day. He crept towards her quietly, walking carefully, as if afraid to wake her. But the grandmother was wide awake. She watched him, holding her breath, feeling her heart pound fiercely in her chest. The young man stopped at the headboard of the bed and stood there for a long moment, as if wrestling with himself. Should he go through with what he planned? The grandmother began to pray silently. "Oh God, what is he planning? What does he have in his hands? Why did I let a stranger in? And what if he—" Through her half-closed eyelids, the grandmother watched in terror as the young man suddenly reached out and did this. The young man slowly raised his hands, holding a pillow. "It's better for both of us," he whispered hoarsely, pressing the pillow down onto the elderly woman's face. The grandmother recoiled, let out a muffled, desperate cry, and began to struggle, pushing him away with her hands. The pillow fell to the floor, and the young man stepped back, shocked that she was fighting back. The elderly woman screamed with all her might, "Help! Neighbors! I'm being attacked!" Neighbors arrived within seconds. The door hadn't been locked. One ran to the bedroom, the other rushed to call the police. The young man stood against the wall, confused and pale, as if he didn't understand what had happened. He was restrained and led outside to the courtyard. Later, when the police arrived, it became clear that the young man was not who he claimed to be. His parents had died mysteriously years ago. He was the sole witness, and the investigation was never able to conclusively prove what had happened. From then on, he had lived under different names until he devised a new plan to move in with a trusting elderly woman and then stage her death to take over her apartment.